Little Ham says it's time to rock and roll.
Bring the noise.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Good evening, folks, and welcome to the end of the January window E-Tim's podcast, or possibly Rantcast, depending on what mood Hector Bandido is in tonight. So I'm glad to welcome Hector Bandido to the floor. Good evening, Hector.
Good evening, guys.
Good evening also to Monty C. Burns, the exasperated man across the water, I believe is your new title. Good evening, Monty.
I'm knackered counting the amount of millions that are still left in the bank. Fucking buzzed.
Yes, so hopefully we did ping for Ralph to join us, but I think he's out scouting for new talent or driving James Forrest to somewhere in the Midlands. So you join us here. It is approximately 1953 on the 1st of February 2024. The January window, I say that with quotes, air quotes, is just about to close in the next few hours. And every one of us is sitting here asking, what the fuck, Hector? What the fuck indeed?
We're all, every one of us scratching our heads, just wondering, as you say, and it goes back to the summer, and we left the summer transfer window, and at the end of it, there wasn't one, what you would call, I suppose Naraki was probably the exception to it. There wasn't really one guy you would say was coming in as an absolute certainty to start. Obviously, he got injured straight away. The others were what would you define, and the majority would be considered projects. That's not necessarily a bad thing. We've discussed before. It's part of the Celtic. It has been part of the Celtic strategy for a while. Hit and miss, I think it'd be fair to say. So I don't think we're really complained about that as a strategy. It's just the fact that the balance was really off. And all of us felt it with all that money and us going straight to the Champions League as well. We just felt there was a lack of ambition again for the board, and certainly spending money in a way that most of us wouldn't have spent. So then you had Rodgers asked many times after that, and he's played the game. He's been quite calm. He's not threw toys at the pram like he did in his first spell when he fell out with the law. We'll probably come back to that again. But it was all about, he was pushed and pushed and pushed. And I think a few weeks later, he said, look, I wanted 4 first-team players in. I was conscious we had lost a few last season. I'd looked at the last number of games, done my planning, wanted 4 first-team starters. And he emphasised time and time again, pace, power and physicality was what he felt was needed within the kind of starting group. When I say starting group, it's not necessarily the first 11, you know, that 15, 16 core players that will rotate within the squad. And then throughout the Champions League games and some near misses, whatever, apart from one pump, and invariably after a defeat or whatever, the next media conference he was asked again about the January planning, and he was pretty clear. He's like, next 2 windows are vital for me and the club to get what we need. Again, pace, physicality and power. And all the way up until the break at the start of January, he was consistent in saying that. So you've had the manager now consistently saying for the best part of 4 or 5 months, the January window and this coming summer window, between the two, will like to shape the team and, in his view, fill in some of the gaps that we have. We can all see that, right? So we now get to the 1st of February, 3 hours before the window slams shut, and we brought in a young winger from Vienna, young German winger, who may be good, seems to have pace, but this is all based on YouTube clips and a 15-minute run out against Ross County. And by the looks of it, we've signed a young striker, 6'3" and 6'4" striker from Norwich City in the English Championship, who doesn't have the best of goal scoring records, and I'm being pretty upfront about it, and isn't a regular, what you call as a starter, a star of the team, and we've taken him on loan to the end of the season with no purchase clause. I think we're all at a complete loss as to how we've got here, why we're sitting here 3 years to go, and the managers consistently said these things, and we're sitting with, at the end of June, was it £72 million, and the interims are just about to be announced, which is up to December 23 there, where it'll be a significant increase to that 72 million. It's probably not far off 100 million, 90 to 100 somewhere, and we're still doing what we're doing. We just want somebody to tell us, what's the strategy? Is there a strategy? We're all confused, Desi. I
Yeah,
think it's fair
yeah.
to say we're all confused, right?
Yeah, exactly. I had a good running discussion. It wasn't an argument. It was a discussion with someone on Twitter the other night, and he was having a go because I raised the Rocco Vata conundrum. And that's the whole strategy. My whole point was strategy. What strategy? Rocco Vata was told he was no wanted. He was free to find a move. Then suddenly he was brought back into the team. Then he was out the team again. And then he was maybe got to 2 teams in Italy. And then suddenly we were offering him a contract. And then we were giving him a low ball offer. And then we were chasing a guy who can't get a game for Norwich and he's Weldon. And it's like he's another Irish international and you're going, what strategy? There's no apparent strategy. But before we got into the personnel, Monty, you put up a link today to an interesting story in respect to, is Brendan asking the board for 4 quality players? That was a bit of a curveball that I have heard story from the reporter.
Yeah. I'm not sure on that. I read that and I was quite taken aback. And then you read between the lines, and it's a hard one to believe. And that particular publication or website don't tend to be particularly pro-Celtic either. But there's a guy, effectively, for anyone who hasn't read it, there's a guy who's gone on the record as saying he had a conversation, Andrew Smith,
Yep.
said that he'd had a conversation with Rodgers. And in that, Rodgers was making clear his frustrations. And, 4 became 6 when Jota and Starfield left, because Rodgers had had a bit of time to evaluate it. And seemingly, Andrew Smith said to Brendan Rodgers, have you told the board? And Brendan Rodgers says no. Now, you're into the subtleties of what the fuck's going on here. And, I've been ranting a bit on our WhatsApp and whatnot. But there's 2 things. There's 2 really, really difficult things to kind of fathom here. One is that Rodgers has come back and is going to leave quickly because it's just not working out, which is hard to kind of get your head around. But when you look at all the available evidence, fucking Occam's razor, the most obvious thing tends to be the answer. And either the club can't or the club won't back him. And I made the point today, give the guy the players that he wants. And if he fucks it up, then you sack him. Worst case. The other thing that I mentioned, Desi, was that, and this is another hard thing for me to get my head around, because none of this makes sense. None of it, absolutely none of it makes sense. We give, and I'll come back as to why in the confusion of it all. The other thing is that Rodgers was the best available coach in terms of tier 1 level, who was available at that time and prepared to come to Celtic after Dermot Desmond supposedly spoke to him, but that he actually wasn't the best manager for Celtic, given the strategy that had been laid out when Ange is here. And these are so fucking contradictory that I'm struggling to find any sense in it. But the long and short of it is that the man has been given arguably 2, if not 3 players maximum that he's signed off on. Naraki, Kuhn, the winger, and Ida, which is fucking mad to think. But as Hector pointed out, Adam Ida is a 5-month loan and he's going back. We've sent Mikey Johnson away, I think, on a loan, and he's coming back. It looks like Turnbull's going to go because the club will get a return on him. We've sent Tillio back to Australia for reasons as to why he came in the first place unknown. But we've done nothing. We've really, really done nothing. And the only logical thing you can think in that context, Desi, is the club can't or won't back the manager. And in that context, it's just a fucking shambles. It's insane.
Yeah.
Really, really insane.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the podcast, the potential podcast title tonight, obviously by the time people listen, we'll have established what the title is, but there could be so many WTF, such a fucking shambles. We're just accumulating titles as we go on. But let's go into the personnel, as we mentioned there, because there's no rhyme nor reason whatsoever. And I keep asking on our podcast, on our WhatsApp, it does not make sense. And is it just the sheer smoke and mirrors that we assume these people are competent. I mean, like, people, is it just a case of they're no competent because there appears to be no rhyme nor reason or no strategy? Comms could be another issue, but let's look at the people and then we'll come on to moving forward, right? So
Desi, let me just make one point just before we jump into it, because it rounds out the business side of things. And if we accept that these guys are incredibly highly paid executives of a PLC, and they are incredibly highly paid, and if I recall correctly, they give themselves quite a fucking significant uplift in the summer or at the last sort of review. If you accept that their motivations are primarily and solely financial because they have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders, then I'm wondering, and I've seen this in previous existences, targets that trigger bonuses for executives. As Hector pointed out, there's 72 million in the bank. And I'm wondering, then deep in the fucking recesses of the bonus structure, is there a payout if they get the cash levels to above 100 million?
Well, who knows, right? So we'll come on to possibilities, answers to but the whole point is, I think the worst thing is, as we've discussed quite a lot between us, the worst thing is it's the great unknown, right? Because no one knows what the reason is. So all you can do is have conjecture and think, could it be this? Is it that? Could it be an amalgamation of different things? But we'll go into that in a second. Let's just have a quick roll call. So in Nicholas Kuhn, and we're still awaiting the announcement of, so we're saying, is it Eda, Monty? Is it pronounced Eda? Eda. So yeah. I like to joke on Twitter, it was Peter Lawwell asked Mark Lawwell, have you got anybody I can sign a toy to keep them happy? And he replied, Ida. And so Peter Lawwell ran away and got him. Right, but the worst thing is, Ida's coming in as after Norwich went and get Sidney Van Hooydonk, a guy who we've apparently been scouting and carting around for 6 months, right? So that's just the cherry on the top of that bitter cake, right? Out, we've got Tilo back to Oz, and Mick, who's part of the E-Tins group, he lives in New Zealand, and he always speaks highly of Tilo, says he needs games, but he clearly wasn't built for the Scottish game, and it's just one of these shame things. Hopefully he does well when he's back in Australia. Turnbull looks as though he's away, so we'll take the hit in that, and we got some good goals off of him. But again, as Ralph pointed out in our chat, that's your third top goal scorer left the club. And then Hatati's also injured, so now there's more reliance on Matt O'Reilly again. Idaguchi's Quan's away on loan. Adam Montgomery, hopefully he gets better soon. That's a shame that he went out on loan to Motherwell, which could have been a good move for him, but got badly injured, so he's back recuperating at Celtic Park. And then Mackenzie Carsey's also out on loan. Right, so I went back and listened to our last pod just before we came on air, right, where we had a predictions round at the end. And you two guys are always a lot more optimistic regards Celtic than I am. Monty, you said you believed there'd be at least one or two quality signings, right? I said I believed there'd only be one quality signing and one loan at a push, right? And Hector, you said, and there's lots of caveats, don't think I'm having a go here, right? You said you think in your heart of hearts you hope for three or four. You thought there'd be 3 or 4, 1 or 2 paying a fee for, and 1 or 2 loans with options to buy. So that's, as you pointed out earlier on, options to buy. But the most interesting thing I took from it was, right, Celtic have got their main targets. This is Hector we were talking there. You said the previous pod. Celtic have got their main targets have been looking at for at least 6 months, and Rodgers is staying. Celtic are staying in Glasgow. They're not going away for the winter shutdown. Rodgers is staying to help conclude the deals and get to see the new personnel. So why did he stay if they're not bringing anybody in? And then you said, and the caveat was, that will be if Rodgers and his guys are doing the business, they'll bring guys in. So clearly, no one at Celtic is. We're not laying blaming individuals at this point, but no one at Celtic as a collective are doing the business clearly. How do we get in? Somebody put up a link to all the January windows under Rodgers, and it's always harem scarum. It's just always been madness. And then last year under Ange, I think it was 2 in the first day, and then Giakoumakis may leave for the extended MLS window. That was it. It was done and dusted. Calm waters. Whereas now we're back to
There's a
madness.
pattern, Desi. And we spoke about this in a recent podcast about the last summer's fiasco in terms of lack of first team ready players with all the money we've got at our disposal. And the pattern was that Angie's first window was actually the exception to the rule.
Yep.
We'd lost the league. He was coming in. A rebuild was required. And what the club did was they really backed him because they had to back him. Ange also had the benefit of having his contacts as well. That's probably a lot of the reason why we got some of these guys in. But it got a nice balance between young players. So Joe Hart absolutely been vital for us when Ange brought him in. Good experienced international, was there to steady the ship. Giakoumakis, the top scorer in the Dutch league. Again, wasn't a project, top scorer. Juranovic, Croatian international, quality team. McCarthy, I know it hasn't worked out, but if you step back to the time we signed him, they're actually most fans program. That's not a bad thing just to help steady the ship a wee bit. So we had a balance between experience and even Kyogo was 25, wasn't he? He wasn't a 21-year-old project. He's 25-year-old. So it was a nice balance. And then that January window with Maeda, Hatate and O'Reilly all brought in 3 really good talented young players. But see, after that, Angie's second summer window and his second January window, it was a pattern was emerging of let's get back into old shit habits of just not getting the quality of player we wanted in, getting some loan players who were questionable at best, and then some of the guys we did sign. Let's look at Bernabe, £3.5 to £4 million, a guy who just looks pretty horrendous, right? So the last 2 before Rodgers, then the summer with Rodgers, and this one, that's now 4 windows of abject failure as far as the club's concerned. So what's behind this pattern? Have the club changed tact? Looks like it. When's the last time we signed an experienced player of any note? I can't think of one. But you guys, I'd love to hear. But there's something that not right there. Just prior to Rodgers arriving, I wonder if that actually helped to push Ange out the door, other than the carrot I got to England, obviously. I get it, but he's maybe been scurried, get back the first 2 windows and went, fuck this. I'm not having this nonsense. So there's something not right there. What really bugs me more than anything is the job these guys have got in terms of running the scouting department and planning ahead with the manager and the club. It's not that difficult. It was more difficult years ago. Nowadays, they've got access to all the data at their fingertips, all the video footage at their fingertips. And what I mean by that is that if it's Ange or Brendan or whoever it may be says, right, this coming summer, I want in 3 positions. I want a left back, I want a number 6, I want a keeper. All the data's at the fingertips to put in the parameters they want to work within, the skill set they've got, and it'll come back with circa 100 players, 150 players, different values, and they'll narrow it down. They'll watch the players, they'll go and scout them. That's quite easy to do. And the fact that we can't fucking do that, it's actually embarrassing.
I think, Hector, we've been given the reason why in some of the I would say political statements that have been made over the last 48 hours. I popped up that interview that appeared last night that Rodgers gave to Graham McGarry in the National, or at least he ran with it. And he talks about data and stats. He also talks about his sort of philosophy on turning over the staff, or turning over the playing staff. And this is what I mean about the contradictions in what we're doing versus what the manager says. So we gave Carter Vickers, Kyogo, Maeda, Hatate, Abada, McGregor. We gave them all big contracts. 4 years, 5 years. Yet, and I'm going to quote Rodgers, his exact words, it's not like the old days when you went, right, that's the squad and we'll keep them together for 5 or 6 years. One, that doesn't work anyway. You have to recycle your squad every 3 years. You have to. Even if it was a team, this is his words, even if it was a team that had won 3 trebles, on that 4th year you want to change it because of the hunger. That's what experience tells us. What's he doing right now? He's changing a team that has had a treble and a double under Ange. So this is his starting position. So if we assume he's put his nucleus together of 4 or 5, well then that's his nucleus for the next 2 years. But what isn't happening around the edges is that these other 4 or 5 quality players, because if you add 4 or 5 to that and they're of an equal quality, fuck, that's a good starting 11, right? But in relation to data, this is what's I think this is the answer. I think with Ange, he handed the profile. He had, as you point out, clear insights into exactly the player who would fit the profile. And they were easy deals to do because of the commercial value of them and the markets that these players were in. I think Ange just went with the recommendation and the data. Now, remember, he always did the phone call, the convincing phone call, or the convincing Zoom call. Remember, we heard that in most signings? Rodgers, and again, his words, there'll be certain clubs who will only look at that side of it. This is data analysis. But there are things you can never find out through analysis other than being in a stadium, watching the players, see what their movement's like, seeing how he deals with the atmosphere. The analytical side doesn't tell you if someone has heart and personality. When you play for a club like this one, you need to have heart and mental strength. You have to find out those things and see them live. Statistics will give you a lot, but I'm not driven by it. It's something which is a really good support for us. If I read between that, and his last comment, by the way, is really powerful. But if I read between that, that's him saying, I want control of all aspects of hiring. Now, whether he was promised that by Dermot Desmond and it just hasn't happened, or whether he's now realised, fuck, I never asked for that in my terms and conditions, which you have to, as my mate Snaffle Tafo said, you have to assume this guy's not naive. He's walked in knowing what the parameters were. But we're in a scenario now where it appears that the manager does not have control over signings, or if he rejects them, he's not being offered a viable alternative that he likes. Therefore, fuck it, I don't want any of them. And there's a quote in here. It's about mentality. He's tried to get as much of an understanding of mentality he can, but has he backed away from some? Yes. There's probably some I wish I had done so. There are plenty who talk a good game. It's very, very clear that the data-driven way that we have scouted players before is not the way that Rodgers wants to do it now. And I think that's the disjoint, Hector. I think you've identified it.
I think there's 2 parts though, Monty. I think I broadly agree with it. We've obviously repeated a lot of what he said and what your own views on it. But I also think there was 2 parts to it. 100% what you said there. The other part is the eye test, and go and see the player if you can. Data's great. Of course, it builds a profile for you, but it doesn't fulfil all the metrics. Part of them Rodgers touched upon, but Ange's also mentioned that as well. And even Ange's players he brought in, 5 are from Japan. The first 3 that have been a success are all guys that he brought to the club. It wasn't Mark Law, whoever was the Celtic scout department. Yeah. Ange went, there's a guy called Kyogo Furuhashi. He's fucking great. 4 million, get him. And then Hatate and Maeda played for him as well. So these aren't ones that the club had magicked out of our wonderful scouting. This was ones that he had said. And it's just, I just find that, I think we're all scratching our head about it, because if the club had no money, or was even had a surplus of 15 to 20 million, and there's always a risk there with the football, European football, whatever it may be, to a degree you kind of get it. Yeah. I think we were all scratching our head is that it's having so much cash. It's having an amount of cash that not many, if very few clubs will have this level of cash in their bank account. And I'm talking about clubs you would consider the richest clubs in Europe, who are contained by a mountain of debt. The Manchester United, I forget how good they are just now, but as a club, a massive club, mountain of debt. Real Madrid, mountain of debt. Barcelona, mountain of debt. We've got more cash in the bank. We're touching £100 million. Way more. If there was a fucking Champions League for bank accounts, we'd get to the final, right? But there's this reluctance, and this is where we're scratching our head. We seem to be stuck in this loop of, right, there's your parameters. It's circa 2 to 4 million £2-3 million. But you know what? If we can strike a loan deal for a player to get him for a season and he's really good, gives us an option to buy a guy who's really good for £6 million. Carter Vickers, Jota, possibly Bernardo. Right? I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but there's this reluctance to go and up our level, our band of payment to buy a player. So we want top dollar, understandably. We want from 10 million to 12 million to 20 to 25, 27. We're getting the benefit of that when it comes in the way. But there's this reluctance within the club to say, do you know that old band we worked within about 3-4 million? It's now between 6 and 8 million. And we just don't seem willing to go there without cast iron guarantees, i.e. the loan of a player being successful for 12 months before we do it. Yeah. And I just don't understand.
There's a regression. I did an analysis for a guy recently, work related. His company brought in 250 grand of investment, 2021, and it's just simple. You can do it online. There's loads of calculators. How much is 250 grand effectively equivalent to today? It's 327. So in the space of 2 years, what you got for 250 grand now costs you 327. In real terms, just in fucking real terms for investment. So when did we sign Edouard? 7 years ago?
Rogers signed him after a year on loan. Right.
So 7 years ago, probably 6-7 years ago. Ange for 2, Lenny for 3, Rogers for... Yeah, it's fucking 7 or 8 years ago. €9 million, 7.2 million pounds.
6 years ago.
6 years ago. 7.2 million pounds if it's 80 pence or 80 fucking p or whatever. Or let's say it's €8 million, just for the fucking sake of the argument. €8 million 6 years ago is probably a 12 or a 13 million euro player now, if the market remains consistent. But football's that fucked right now that you're seeing Serie A players, starting Serie A strikers, move for 2 million. So whatever's happening in there, you think maybe, are they getting prepared for some other change? Are they getting prepared for some other set of parameters that we don't see? But
Desi, keep it bring you in. Just one final point. Mm-hmm. Just your last point you raised there, Monty, and we've kicked this about in our WhatsApp chat as well. For us, we are possibly in the strongest position of being in 20 to 30 years in terms of the market. So, one, the cash in bank, but to your point, the amount of sales this January across what we perceived as the cash-rich leagues in Europe, it's been non-existent, because by the sounds of it, financial fair play is really kicking in. In many ways, that's given us an opportunity to buy a level of player that's possibly been out with our reach now for at least a decade, maybe 20 years, get back to Martin O'Neill's time. And it's another reason why we're scratching my head going, so why are we not taking advantage of this right now? And I just, other than being scunnered, get absolutely no idea.
Occam's razor, it has to be the most obvious reason is the answer. And the most obvious reason is that the club can't or won't back the manager. And if that's the case, the manager leaves. The manager fails and he leaves.
Right. I've made a few notes here. One, I'd recommend everyone, if you've not seen it, go and watch a Kevin Costner film called Draft Day, where it's actually the NFL draft and he's in charge of a team and he's got the first pick in the draft. Me and Ralph have talked this a few times, and he gets told, you've got to pick this guy, his stats are out the window, they're fantastic, blah, 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 and he doesn't go for him. And everybody goes, why did you not sign that guy? And he said, because my investigator looks for things beyond the stats. And the ultimate reason he doesn't sign the guy is no one went to his birthday party. Right? It sounds silly, but when you watch the film, you appreciate the guy's not got a personality, he's not a team player. This is a young superstar going to be, and Kevin Costner just walks away because he knows there's more than the stats. So I'd recommend you all go and watch that. Also, like, Hector, you, I, and Monty, for our sins, have all been project managers at some point in our life. And I don't know about you, I'm just assuming, we all assume somewhere in the basement of Celtic recruitment, there's a big board with swim lanes on it saying next 6 months, next 12 months, next 18 months, next 2 years. And they've got a whole list of players that are out of contract and they're monitoring and they're constantly aware. It doesn't matter who the manager is, they've got these targets that they know are going to be available. And that's one of the things that kind of annoy me. We've not been linked with anybody who's out of contract this January. No, that's sort of way. We've not even been linked with a summer signing at this point. So again, where's the longer term strategy? And then my main point for that, well, we could, if we talk about stats again, we've already mentioned either stats are very questionable, so why even bother? But the main question I had was, I put this up the other night, are the club more interested on return on investment per dollar spent? If you imagine, if you spend 9 million on an Edward and we get what back, say 18, even 20 on Edward, 100%.
I think it was 50. I think it was about 50 million.
Right, so not even 100% return on your money, right?
Yep.
But if you sign some guy at 4 million, you sign a Jota at 6 million, and you sell him for 25 million, they're getting 300% return on your money. So if you sign a guy at 1 million and you can sell him at 10 million or 11, they're getting 1,000% return on your money. Is that their goal? To try and get maximum return on investment rather than buying high, what they would call high, we would call medium, so to speak, or medium term. Rather than spending an 8 million, they'd rather spend 4 times 2 million and hope that they get one of them working. You know what I mean?
But that's the thing, Desi, around risk and risk profile. And risk profile set within a strategy that a board controls and directs and makes sure it stays within the edges. And that's the key. And that's why I'm saying that completely bizarre and contradictory statement that Rodgers was the best available, most qualified manager on the market that was prepared to come to Celtic at that time. But he wasn't the best manager for Celtic, based on the strategy that was in place at that time. And that's what I'm saying about, has Desmond had his fucking Peter Law, Lenny in the showers moment here? Right. We're going to find out in the next 3 months.
Right, before you give me 1 second, this to give some user, some reader input, and then you can continue, because it's the exact same point, right? So we did ask today about various things about Celtic, and we'll come on to one of them. But one of them was, how did it come to this, right? And at Sevco Sitcom posted on Twitter replying to us, Monty, you can reply to this. Why is a mustachioed billionaire bringing together Brendan Rodgers and Peter Lawwell Sr. when he must realise both seem content to hurt the club in pursuit of separate agendas? And I've been asking that question, like, how did that play out, and how does that manage to play out? How did Brendan Rodgers get chased by Dermot Desmond to please come and join your club, and then somehow Peter Lawwell's also there, and did Dermot just assume everything would be fine, or did Brendan assume he had carte blanche, but he's not got carte blanche? Like, there's so many unknown questions, there's so many questions with no answers to that we're getting.
Yeah, these are all these contradictory things that you could fucking scramble around and go kind of insane on, Desi, trying to work it out, or as you say, try to plot. It's like a fucking stupid, daft novel. But ultimately, Desmond owns the club, so he takes the calls. Then he sets the train in motion, and then he fucks off, as demonstrated by him at the pro-am, the golf tournament in New York, or wherever he's playing. Celtic is a small thing for him in the grand scheme of his investments from a monetary perspective, but it's a huge thing for him as regards his profile.
Yeah. And
I get a sense that it's an ego thing, it's an old boys network thing. There's all of that you really, really don't know. People, like, you look at that fucking org chart, 3 Strachan's, 3 Lawls, and 2 fucking Desmonds are on the payroll. We're this close to the Kellys and Whites again. And it's the most bizarre. I haven't been, and I'm very often puzzled, but I haven't been this puzzled about Celtic Football Club since probably the early 90s, when you were trying to figure out why we couldn't win a game of football. This makes no sense. 5 points clear, huge volumes of money in the bank, really, really strong position, tier 1 manager, but we won't back him. All of the subtlety of resuscitating the Huns, all of a sudden that feels like the most obvious fucking thing. And it's, I don't know, I am beyond logic. Beyond logic.
Just one thing to bring up, because I will forget, and we discussed this very briefly before we started recording this tonight. We stepped back to last summer. I'll be very quick with this one. And the team under Ange who'd won the treble. And obviously, Moy retires. He was a big part of our steadying influence last season in midfield. Did a really good job. We got an offer for Jota. Fair enough. No criticism of the club for such an amazing offer. I think you're right to accept that. That's not a criticism. Then Starfield goes. With the sounds of it, it was a surprise by Rodgers at the time. But irrespective, there's 3 of your kind of core, maybe 14, 15 first team regular players. There's 3 away. Fast forward to January and getting to this point, we're now, Rio Hitate's been injury plagued, and unfortunately for us yet again with Japan. One of probably our not our best player, but our most creative mid, if that makes sense. There's 4. We've got Carter Vickers, who our best defender, plagued by injury again, end of last season and into this season. There's 5. Abad has been in and out, and there's obviously off the field things in as well. There's 6. We're looking at, of our maybe core 14-ish players or so over the last season that have helped us be so successful, half of them are no longer available. Either they've been sold or they're injured. So what I'm getting at is that we are significantly weaker. Not a little bit weaker. We are significantly weaker than we were at the end of last season. And where I'm going to with this one is, if MD thinks that we are certain to go on a long winning run as things currently stand, with everything I've just said, forget it. Absolutely forget it. And what that then puts at play here with the window with 2.5 hours to go, and it looks like, unless something remarkable happens, we're going to go to Pittodrie at the weekend, go to Easter Road midweek just after that. If we go on a bad run of results, the people at Celtic Park better be on their game at the front door, because I reckon the fan base, think back to the COVID season when there was all this, understandably so we locked and everything else, frustrations building up, and the team were playing, we could go and watch them, it was a disaster on the field. They better be ready for what's about to happen, because I think there's this level of anger is at boiling point, because everything we've just discussed, the money being there, the club, the players, the squad getting weaker, the manager not getting backed. I think major revolt with the fans is upon us pretty soon, if results turn against us over the next few weeks. And I wouldn't put that against us based upon us being significantly weaker. Not a wee bit, significantly weaker than we were at the end of last season.
I think the fact that Bielka has been waiting on a flight to Italy for 4 days now, and then Carter Vickers gets another knock, and Bielka's now looked upon as our saviour. I mean, that just sums the whole shambles up. I had a quick question for you, Hector. Is it are we basically kind of missing the point? Is it this fat January? Is it this shedding the weight time? Brendan Rodgers is 51. Is he at an age now where he can't remember 35 players' names? So he's going to get rid of 10 players before he starts to replace them. Is that where we are?
And he's actually funny you should say that. All joking aside, but that was one of the other things he consistently said. The squad is far too heavy, too bloated. I need to reduce it. So one of the things he has done with the club, they've reduced it. And that's no criticism. I think we all needed that. But if you're letting go 6, 7, 8 players, to bring in 2 or 3 bits of quality isn't difficult, really, is it?
Nice. Well, again, let's think positive. We might even make a profit in this window, Monty. So let's try and put a positive slide on this. Right, so now we're going to come to the big question, right? We don't know the answers to what the fuck is going on, but we might be able to ask the question, why the fuck is it going on, right? So the day I asked on Twitter to the people who follow us at eTimsNet, the Celtic board are hoarding so much cash because ... and we get various people's various suggestions, and I've just collated a few of the main headlines here, right? And we'll cut. I'll give you the headlines, and we can start to go through one by one. A few of them we have touched on quite regularly, so it'll be interesting if they come to pass. One, and these are no particular order, right? I'm not saying one or other. One, selling the club. Dermot's looking to sell the club. 2, infrastructure upgrading. 3, boys club compensation. 4, internal fighting. 5, the manager's leaving. 6, just incompetence. 7, keeping the Huns afloat. 8, long-term goals, aka Super League. And 9, cunts are going to cunt. They're all Tories. That's what Tories do. So, Monty, what do you think is possibly out of those? You've touched on selling the club quite a lot in the recent past. Have you heard any rumours? Have you got any inklings? Or do you think this is a classic fattening up the calf before Christmas idea?
I think it is that. I think it's that. I think, as much as Desmond talks about being a custodian of the football club and blah, 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 it's just bollocks. Once it's served its useful purpose as regards his need for connections in that type of egotistical circle, he'll go. He's never made a loss in any investment before, Desi. And it's one of the things that the guy, people write about him and say he's never lost in any of his major investments. Celtic, because of its public profile, will be seen as one, and he's going to make a tidy profit now when he does sell it. But I do think all of the contradictory things that we're seeing, we're compromised by the environment we're in, and that's just a fact. You then layer that up into cynical, Desi, and Peter Lawwell is compromised, as is Nicholson, as is the fact that we have a board of Tory cunts. So yes, cunts will be cunts, and they're all Tories. So definitely you can tick number 10. But when the club's ethos and the fans' sentiment, like we're not thick. We might have been a very ill-informed supporters, group of fans in the 70s and 80s and 90s when it came to all things PLC and business. The old fucking, the guy in the fur coat and the jag, that nonsense, and the worker knew nothing. The society's moved a fucking billion miles away. I mean, we're not wanting the club to go and spaff 72 million on 3 players. We're not. We want the club to show a modicum of ambition and back a really, really good manager. That's all we want. You don't need to hoard cash to do that. You can back him with 4 million to 6 million pound players and get away with that inflationary nonsense that I mentioned earlier as well, because you'll find good ones at that level if you give the manager the player that he wants. And in all of that, if you're the owner or the custodian, if you frame yourself, and I'm getting fucking annoyed the more I'm talking here, if you frame yourself as the custodian of the values of Celtic Football Club, then why the fuck are you making a board?
News.
Mikey Johnson
has just signed for West Brom.
Oh, there you go.
Another wage.
That's another. Hey, Desi, there's another 300 grand off the 300 grand off the wage bill.
How much are we paying for him to go? Because that was apparently a whole change. Let's not forget, we knocked back a loan deal for James McCarthy the other day.
We're giving him 50 quid a night towards the hotel and 20 quid for food.
But the breaking news.
Thank you. You probably brought me down a bit, because my point was, if you're the fucking custodian of the values of Celtic Football Club, why is your board full of Tory cunts? Why do you not back the sentiment of the fan base when it comes to political issues? And why did you bring back a meddling cunt of a CEO and put him in as the chair? All of this, Desi, points to an absent landlord who doesn't really give a fuck. And once it's done with as regards ego or taking a return, he'll take the return and he'll go.
Monty, can I ask you a question? Go back to the very first point about selling the club, which I think is what Desmond would go. I think that's what he wants. I've got no insider knowledge, obviously I've not, but that's opposition here and whatever. Question for you, right? If Desmond's looking to offload the club, I might deny it, but looking to offload it for a few years now, and us being the Scottish market, yada, 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 yada. and it's valued at a certain amount based upon the stock market, share price, etc., etc. So what I'm getting at is that if you go back maybe 3 years, and the club had, for talking's sake, I'm making a figure up here, £20 million cash in the bank, right? If you look to sell now compared to sell then, with the club having £100 million cash in the bank, does that not then mean that he, stroke as a majority shareholder, if looking to sell, can ask for a far higher selling price, knowing that it's not just a share value? Guess what big present I'm leaving you behind in the club bank account here to play with? 100 million quid. So in essence, he would get significantly more selling the club now than he would have got when there was £20 million cash in the bank. I know I'm simplifying things, but I mean, kind of logically, I'm trying to build a bit of logic here that might make a bit of sense.
Well,
so
let's not.
Yeah, go on, Desi.
Let's not forget that in November 2023, Dermot's son said at the AGM, my father grew up a huge Celtic fan. We don't consider ourselves as shareholders. We are custodians. In his lifetime and mine, we will not sell this club. Do we believe them? If anyone can see the video, Hector's making a nice gesture.
The minute a billionaire says they're not doing something, you can be guaranteed that they're doing exactly the opposite.
I think that's what it is, Desi. I think they're fatting things up. We're going to try and sell. The Champions League changes next year, though. Why are you going to try and almost guarantee yourself success with that extra £40+ million sitting there? Another reason why we're all fucking scunnered, right? But I think that's the plan. They want to sell the club with this potential new European thing up and running. I'm just a bit of guesswork. All of us are guessing here. That's the main one for me. I think the other two things are, I think we lack vision in the club from a day-to-day perspective. Lacking vision, lacking ambition. And last but not least, I think they're a bunch of useless cunts.
Yeah.
Right? I really think that's me. That's my three, not necessarily in that order, I think. No, cunts is the number one. Cunts is one.
Cunts being cunts. Welcome to the Cunts Being Cunts podcast by not available on Hanger by Gary Lineker.
They're a bunch of cunts in the podcast.
No, what I was going to say, like just listening to you there, if you apply Brendan's logic, not Tom Rogic, right? Brendan's logic, there should be a freshening up every 3 years, also in the boardroom and in the kind of main kind of role holders, or the main kind of, like say your recruitment guy, etc., etc. They should be churned up, because there's obviously been changes in technology. Are we using AI, etc., etc.? Who's bringing these new ideas in? Is it always going to be Gavin Strachan's laptop that we're looking at? These kind of things, right? So selling the club, right? We also had infrastructure upgrading, talking about Barrowfield, Barrowlands, better off buying Barrowlands. But again, I just didn't see the logic of earmarking 20 million for the Celtic Supporters Club along the road and saying, that'll help the reserves and the women's team. Fair play to them. I'm not having a go at them.
That's bollocks. Come on. You know that's bollocks, right?
I'm not having a go at them.
That £20 million was split over 2 or 3 years, right? So that's not a big lump sum. But your last point is an important one. There's no fucking way they're building a full-size indoor, not a shit one. Lennoxtown's got this fucking 5-a-side wee thing. A full-size, all singing, all dancing, indoor facility at Barrowfield with 200 yards for Celtic Park, and the first team's not using it.
So are we keeping Lennoxtown, or are we parting the reserves? And
do you think they want to pay for 2 separate locations for the upkeep? Come on, Desi, common sense.
I asked the question to the Joe Public, and this is Joe Public coming
back. Get off the fence.
Right, and then so the boy club conversation, there was quite a bit of to and froing, but as far as the majority of people believe, it is covered by any insurance, and we'll let that kind of play itself out. Hopefully sooner the better, let's be honest.
See, even if it wasn't, right, number one, and all of us feel the same way, whatever happened then to the individuals, the young players and their families, was a disgrace. And all of us, and we've had this conversation before, all of us want to see justice take place and make sure that the fuckers, the bastards who did what they did, are up in court and they get their just rewards for this, right? And you know what I mean by that. dealt with. But looking at it purely from a financial perspective, and that's fucking even hate going there with this, right? But insurance is one thing. But if MD genuinely thinks of £100 million for this based upon what's happened at other clubs, and the feedback we heard from people who probably know better than us on that, Desi, the answer would be no, right? So we're just trying to put a bit of context, not from us, but from others who've actually responded to that conversation on Twitter. So I think there's far more to this, and it wouldn't justify £100 million, is really what I'm trying to say.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, these are all points we kind of put to us. So internal fighting we've kind of covered, right? The whole Lawwell, Rodgers. I'm looking forward to if we ever do get answers to that question, because as you can see in your WhatsApp every day, I just can't comprehend how we've got into this situation. Rodgersovsky, so you have mentioned that a few times. Also, Monty alluded to that could be whether he actually, the last time we did the last over the summer, remember it was a case of, right, I've had it, so we'll wait and see if
first week in February it was, the first week in February.
Right, so there you go. So as you say, what if we got to Aberdeen? They've not got a manager, they got a wee bit of a dead cat bounce and suddenly managed to scrape a win with a Miovski, better penalty taker than Palmer style. And then he ends up getting the winner. That'll be a laugh.
Why are we not buying him?
I said that the last time.
A guy for about 3 million, 4 million, 22, 23, bags of pace, has proven the SPL for 2 seasons now. He can find the back of the net.
Exactly.
What with better players? Why are we not buying a guy like him for £3 million?
As I say, and McKenzie, the left back, go to Aberdeen, say there's 6 million. Thanks very much. Take as many of these duds that we don't really need, and go have your game against Rangers. That would been too easy a plan, right? But I want to come to the main one that a lot of people replied to. So Big Kid Dog Doyle, Mary Elman McDom, Scott B 1888, and 100 going bust again. John Miss 509642556. They all replied to keeping the Huns afloat, right? So Big Kid Doyle says it's because they have no interest in finally killing off the zombies. For some warped reason, they want them hanging around. Poor Mary, I've had 2 sleepless nights and might be hallucinating, but there's a shady agreement with the Ibrox mob that they'll win the league this year. Stephen McCarry, they just want to continue the old firm brand, and the Huns are going bust again. The board's been told in no uncertain terms that if they pull away from Sebco, the club and directors will never get a minute's peace. Do you think there's anything in that, Monty? We're actually told Lawwell we need our local rivals to keep an 5 million in the bank balance?
Yeah, I do. Actually, that's what I mean about being compromised by the environment. And Lowell in particular being compromised by the environment, because he spent his life having graduated as an accountant to being a public profile figure for Scottish football. It pains me to say it, but if you took the Huns completely out of the equation, what type of product is the SPL? Now, for me, it's a happy place where we can play really good football, and every now and again, somebody will bloody our nose. But take the Huns out of the equation, and what is the top tier of Scottish football? And I think when you shine the light on that, there's no league anywhere in the world that I can think of that has one club that is of an order of magnitude bigger than all the rest. Is there? Can you think of one? Munich, maybe? Yeah, I can't think of one.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always 2 or 4. Like we always talked about the metrics. There's 2 dominant clubs in Scotland and have been for 50, 60 years. You know, the blip of Aberdeen and Dundee United 40 odd years ago, I think that was. In England, 4 teams have dominated, and every now and again one of them falls by the way and another one comes in and takes its place, and you have the odd blip like Leicester. In Germany, it's Munich, Dortmund, you know, and in times gone past, Schalke and really top tier teams, which were exceptions. Spain, Barcelona, Madrid, Atletico, Valencia for a while. There's always been a dominant 2 or a dominant 4. There's never been one league where it's just a one-horse race. So yes, I do believe there's something in it. Now, how can you be complicit in... See, if you think about it, Desi, the Huns aren't really competition. They're not. If you think if you think in purely commercial terms, there's nobody supporting the Zombies right now that if Celtic were to spend 8 million on 4 different players, that they would stop supporting the Zombies and come to Celtic and give Celtic a return on that particular investment. So it's a weird prism to look at. Football is not a normal thing, but in a PLC where your shareholders are your sole fucking guiding principle, and it's about the money, and it's about earning per share, and it's about dividends and everything else, Desi. Yes, keeping them alive means that the product is more attractive, which means that it can be sold for more money for the external revenue streams. And it also means you're not going to lose, as Hector alluded to, or even pre us coming on this, giving up a season book. Do you think they give a fuck? They couldn't give a fuck if Hector didn't buy another book, because they know he's not going across the city. Now, we all know he's a soft spot for Partick Thistle.
No, you're not wanting the south side.
We know he's
You
a soft spot for
stay
Partick
in the
Thistle.
north.
Southside's no Glasgow. It'll be Partick Thistle for me.
But you see my point, Desi? Yes, I think there's compromise there, and it's very, very difficult. And ironically, it's completely out of sync with the sentiment of the customer base. So we are a football club of contradictions, and I have no fucking idea other than why are you hoarding the cash, and why won't you give the manager what he wants? It's just,
guys. Can I do a quick quiz with you?
Yep. Oh, I like it.
For 2 minutes.
Oh.
A quick quiz, right? It's not a quick quiz. It's more a scoring competition, right? Rather than a quick quiz, right? But it will be quick. So if I've asked you between 1 and 10, and 10 being as high as you can get, and 1 being right? This competition's called Who's the Biggest Cunt competition, right? So I'm going to give you a name, and 10's, they are right fucking up there. They are the cuntiest cunt you'll meet, right? And 1's just a wee cunt, right? Harmless cunt. So I'm going to start, just a few names for you, right? So Desi, we'll start with you. Chief Executive, Michael Nicholson. How big a cunt is Michael Nicholson, Desi?
Nah, I'd say a cunto, maybe a 5.
A 5 out of 10? A medium cunt?
A cunto. Because again, it's an unknown. We don't even know what he does.
No, it's okay. Monty, how about you? Your corporate fiduciary and all that shit. What would you give the chief executive?
I'd only give him a 3 because he's just puppeteering somebody else's views.
Kind of puppetry cunt is what you call him.
A Muppet puppet. A Muppet puppet.
Okay. How about our chief financial officer, Christopher Mackay? Where would we go, Monty? We'll start with you this time. Out of 10, how big a cunt is he?
Don't even think he registers.
So just a wee cunt.
Wee cunt.
A wee cunt. Desi, our chief financial officer, the guy who signs the contracts off.
Exactly.
Desi, do you think he's bigger than a wee cunt?
I'd put him as cunty McCunt. I'd put him up about a 7.
Cunty McCunt. Very
Cunty
good.
McCunt. I'll put him up at 7.
Okay,
as you say, he's the money man. He should be making sure return on investment.
I'm going to give you 3 more names, and that's it. But more on the non-exec side, just to keep things a little bit windswept and interesting, as the great man once said. Right? We're going to go over the water with this one. We're going to go all the way to the fucking main man, the main Ned, Dermot F. Desmond here. Desi, Dermot Desmond. We'll start with you. Name similarities and everything.
I would get a statue of him and I put it in the Celtic way, and underneath I would put the placard El Cunto, so everyone knows. He's the highest of the high, 9.95. Because I'm sure he's nice to his kids at Christmas.
El Mucho Cunto. There we go. El Mucho Cunto, a 9.5 for our Dermot Desmond. Monty, putting aside all allegiances to your fellow Irishman, how would you rate Dermot F. Desmond in terms of cuntishness?
I would have him der Sturmenführer Kunter. That's at least an 8.5. But there's a couple of ranks.
That's your natural fucking bias kicking in again.
That's racism. That's pure racism.
Hey, there's a couple of other fucking ranks in the fucking Reich, I'll tell you, and he's not the top guy.
Okay, we'll get there. You know where I'm going with this one. There's 2 names left. Everyone, and I mean everyone's fucking cuddliest non-executive director. He's only been there for 19 years. Let's start with you, Desi, because I can fucking feel the pain with this one. Brian Wilson, Desi. Let's go to Brian Wilson.
That man is a saint. The saint of cunts. See if there was a saint of cunts, that would be Brian Wilson.
So what number are we giving the saint of cunts
11,
here, Desi?
11.
11
He gets 11. A man who sucked money at that club like blood for nothing.
Our 19 years, Monty, 19 years of fucking non-executive director. The man deserves a fucking stand named after him. There we go. Brian Wilson. Monty, beat 11 out of 10. Go for it, Monty. What do you give Brian Wilson?
I think it's harsh for me to give that, given that you had champagne with him in Spain not that long ago.
You're best
personal friend of mine.
Big fan of the podcast. I would give that left-wing fascist cunt at least 10.5.
10.5.
Let's not forget, everyone. Hector made sure that he get rid of Brian Wilson before I arrived to meet him in Madrid. He was too big. He was having morning brunch with Brian Wilson.
It's nice to be nice, Desi, even to cunts, as you know, right? And last but not least, we've saved. I'm looking fucking forward to this one, right? Okay, let's start with you. Let's start with you, Monty. Right. So, our non-executive directors, our esteemed chairman, Peter Law, on the cunt chart, Monty, where do you rate Peter Law on the cunt chart? That'll do. I think the size says it all. No, keep going, Monty. I want to hear that. I want to hear this. I really want to hear this one.
I actually had to go in because my German's not as good as it used to be, but that rank above Sturmenführer is Obersturmenführer, which is one down from Führer, but he's also Obersturmenführer, Obersturmenführer der Beheizer, Obersturmenführer der Beheizer Aufhart, which is the heated driveway, fucking chief of staff, Uber. Hector, there's no metric. The man is toxic. The man should not be anywhere near the football.
So the toxic cunt out of 10, is he a 20 out of 10? What are you going to give him here?
He's 10 to the power of 2. He's just off the chart.
So the heated driveway toxic cunt is 10 to the power of 2. He's a 20 out of 10. And Tory Glen's fine. We'll go to Tory Glen's finest here, right? I know he's got a word or two to say about Peter Law.
I would never claim the title. Tory Glen's finest will always be Simple Minds. God bless Jimmy and Charlie. That's always their title. Tory Glen's finest. Yeah, but Monty did steal a little bit of my thunder there because I had written the words Uber, as you can see in my post-it pad here. But I'd also written, so if Peter Lawwell, right, so if number one on the cunt list was a heated driveway, Peter Lawwell would be the Hollywood Walk of Fame of cunts, right? That's how I would see him. And if he was on a periodic chart, he would have an atomic half-life of cunt, going down to cunt, and then finally cunt. So that's it. If you cut him through the middle, he'd be like a piece of rock. It would just say cunt all the way in a circle. Right. I mean, so I would say maybe a 2.
A 2 out of 10. Right, okay.
He's always smiling. It's nice to see a guy
Google Translate.
And he made sure
Google Translate tells me.
What were you, Hector?
I think they're fucking great at their jobs, Desi, to be honest with you.
You still get your shares?
No, listen, I think you guys covered it. I mean, genuinely covered it really well. We had to, you know what, if you don't laugh, you'll greet. It's an old saying they see here in certainly in Glasgow. And that's kind of where we are just now. We're all scunnered, we're scratching our head. And we've got to that point where we're just starting to look at it and almost bring a bit of humour into it, just for their own sanity as much as anything else. So, listen, hopefully this doesn't become an annual event where we have the cunts chart, right? I think it served its purpose for 5 minutes, to be fair, right? So, sorry, Desi. Desi,
it's a perfect place to end it. But this to put the cuntish cherry on top of the cunt of the year, I have heard a certain rumour that Celtic, as well as penny pinching when it comes to January window, are now also looking to raise by a substantial percentage the charge for disabled season tickets. So let's see if they've got the gumption to dare do that in this time, in these harsh times. So I'm going to put it past them. When I put that out today, people did say sounds perfectly normal for our Celtic board. So fingers crossed that doesn't happen, but that's a good place to leave it. I had one shout out, just talking about Tory Glen's finest, a shout out for Kieran at GR Hairdressing in Kings Park, a very good Celtic man looking to get his business up and running. And the hairdressers across the road is full of free Huns, as in free, not this for nothing. So if you're in the Kings Park area, take your hairdressing needs to GR Hairdressing in Cairn across the road.
Unless you're a Celtic director, get the fuck.
Escape, exactly. And he's a good cunt, whereas the rest of them, well, you know yourself. That's it. So that's us, folks. Hopefully we've managed to bring up a smile in this very harsh time. We'll see if anyone else comes in. Robbie Keane may be heading up the M74 right now. Who knows? There may be pitchforks in the car park by the morning. We'll soon find out.
Who was the Czech left back? Remember Kadlik? Was it for fucking 200 years? We were trying to sign this Czechoslovakian Czech left back, Mikkel Kadlik.
Listen, I'm still holding out for that. I'm still holding out for Darryl Huckleby. Remember, he was an Ireland.
Darren Jackson. I fucking take Darren Jackson now. That's how bad it is.
So we'll wait and see if we do get in. But the chances are James Forrest will probably leave. We're still trying to get people at the door, let alone in the door. So God only knows. So it's been a disastrous window. We can only hope that Aberdeen's not got a manager. Hopefully they don't have a bounce on at the weekend, and we can manage to get an ugly 1-0 win and just get through February. That's all we can do at the moment. And regroup. Hopefully the Asia Cup, etc. That's all finalised and we can get back together and we'll see how it goes. All right. So on this cuntish night, to round up, I'd just like to say thanks to a good cunt and Hector Bandido. Thank you, Hector.
Thanks, guys.
And a fine cunt and Monty C. Burns. That's what the C stands for. Finally, we understand what the C is. Finally. So Monty the cunt Burns. Thank you very much, Monty.
Thank you very much, lads. Enjoy it.
Okay, folks. Thanks very much for listening. That took a bit of a twist. Enjoy the rest of the January window and try and wipe the tears away. All right, my name is Desi. Good night.
January, sick and